the Denny Hamlin thing, man, I was really surprised by that.
Me and both.
I'm not so much curious as to what happens on the racetrack or what kind of penalties might come down on Denny or whatever. I'm just curious to watch him navigate this new position as a content creator. And I know probably nobody else cares about that, but when he goes back into his podcast next week, right, and going forward, he talks about, hey, as long as I got this microphone, I'm going to do this, I'm going to say this, or until Ross gets a microphone, right? He can say whatever he wants, right, when he gets his own microphone. So I'm interested to see kind of how Denny ebbs and flows in his content and what he might say next week about whatever repercussions come from that admission.
Yeah.
And he might have, which I like Denny being honest on his show. And I know a lot of people like it and a lot of people don't like it, right? A lot of people have a lot of different opinions about what they're seeing from Denny in his podcast. But I think it's great that he's pretty much transparent and probably too honest. But he could have just said, I was out of control and I wasn't looking to save him. Because a lot of times when you're on the inside of somebody and you get loose or you're out of control or you're kind of, you're sliding up the racetrack, you can spin yourself out, and the guy on the outside just carries on. You can turn yourself around. I was at, so Denny had that option, right, to just spin himself and do everything he could to avoid hitting any car on his outside, which happened to be Ross. But he said, you know what, since it's Ross, I'm gonna correct to the right. I'm gonna door him, and we're going into the fence. And I think he could have maybe worded it that way. I don't think that he went. I don't think that he was like, "Here's my chance to ruin his race." I think that he thought, "I'm sliding up the track. I'm gonna lose all these spots because I'm out of control.
Yeah,
and my car back up, and I'm just gonna use him as a way to keep me from wrecking." I was racing at Myrtle Beach in the 90s, and I used to try to pass the same guy. And 2 weeks in a row, I spun out underneath him. I'd get underneath him down a straightaway, and he was coming to the bottom, and he would cut you off. His name was Ray. And every time you got under him, this guy would act like you weren't there. And you knew it. And he'd tell you, look, I'm coming down. If you want to spot, you're going to have to drive through me. It was the craziest thing. I never knew anybody that ever raced like that. But you'd get underneath him, and he'd just turn left into the corner like you weren't there. 2 weeks in a row, I spun out underneath this guy because he'd come down, and I'd turn the wheel and get all loose and out of control and spin out. And I'd come home, and Dad's like, "Hey, man, what happened this weekend?" I said, "Man, I got under that guy again, and I spun out." And he goes, "Next time you're underneath him and he comes down the track, just slam on the brakes, plant your front tires, and lock your car into the track and hold the wheel straight. Spin him out." I was like, "You sure?" He's like, "Yeah." And so literally like the next race, that's what happened. Got underneath him. He came down the track. And so, I mean, that's kind of what Denny had to do. He had a choice of spinning himself out or further ruining his race, but doing it alone, or trying to correct into the car on the outside. He knew he was going to lose spots anyways, but he's going to take somebody with him. But that was fascinating.
Yeah.
That was fascinating that he would be, kind of wonder sometimes what he's thinking. There's a bigger message or a bigger, he got on that podcast and admitted that because he's got some plan, right? He's got something, and he's got some plan how this is going to work out in his head.
I think so.
Fascinating as to where he's going with all that.
Yeah, I don't think Denny gets careless with his comments, even though it may seem like that. I think that he knows what he's doing, and so like none of this stuff. A friend of ours texted me this morning. He said it's almost like Denny was daring NASCAR to do something about it. And I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know that I don't know.
I don't think that
I wouldn't go that far, but I do think he didn't. I don't think he misspoke. I think he definitely could have.
I think Ross.
What's that?
I said, I don't know if he's daring NASCAR so much as he's daring Ross.
Well, listen, if you listen to the podcast, the story ends with a happy ending. It ends with them having a truce. It does.
I wonder if Ross will feel like
well,
that.
they
After
had a
he
conversation
listens to
after the race.
podcast.
They had a conversation after the race, and Ross says to Denny, I guess I deserved that one, didn't I? And Denny says, yes. So this is the thing. When I think you're right. I think that Denny could have framed this up better. The way he framed it up was that I was going to have a bad day, and I was, by God, bringing somebody with me. I wasn't going alone to my bad day. I was going to bring Ross with me because damn him. That's how he framed it up. What seemed to be the case, though, is that they were racing hard, and Denny goes back to feeling disrespected by Ross. And he says this. He says that it all goes back to a respect thing. He says that he told Ross, I just don't know why you're disrespecting when you're driving. You're just so disrespectful. And so they have this conversation, and they have a truce. It's what he says. He goes, we say, neither one of us want this to continue. Let's race each other exactly how we want to race each other from this day forward. This is happening over the weekend, and this is what he also says in the podcast. This is the part that's not getting any airplay. The part where Ross says, I think I deserve that, and the part where Denny and him reach a truce and say, let's race each other hard, but let's not race each other disrespectfully. So
maybe Dirty Mo Media needs to cut that clip and put that one out tomorrow.
Let's cut that clip.
The rest of the story. The rest of the story.
The rest of the story. Yeah, it'll be after the fine, I guess. No, I'm kidding. But I saw that Elton Sawyer got on Sirius XM this morning and was saying we've heard the podcast and they are considering fines. And listen, this wouldn't be the first time Denny's been penalized for something, but or fined for something. But it'd be interesting to see what he says. And I mean. Go ahead.
Well, I just think that they need to call Denny and they need to talk to him about really what went down. I understand Denny went on his show and said what he said, but and I'm sure NASCAR probably is calling Denny and saying, hey man, this is they might not call him and ask his side of events, right? They might just call him and tell him what they're going to do. But as far as the penalty, man, I mean, this happens. This happens every race. Nobody gets out and admits it. Me and Denny were racing at Phoenix or Michigan one year, and the Toyotas were terrible. They didn't have any power, and I was trying to pass Denny in turn 3 and 4. And if I didn't clear him and get in line, if you remember how Michigan races go, if you got a guy on your outside off of 4, they all get lined up and train you down the front straightaway. And you lose a bunch of spots. Well, I was really fast, and all the Hendrick cars were quick. And Denny I'm going by Denny. I know it. I'm going to pass him. He's slow. All their cars were terrible. And he hangs on my right rear quarter panel off of turn 4. And I was like, no, sir. And I just came up the track and fenced him off of 4. I was like, not going to hang on my right rear quarter panel and cost me 4 or 5 spots down the front straightaway when I'm damn quicker than you. We come off, I finished top 5, and I think he finished 5th. I finished 4th or 3rd. We parked on pit road, and everybody gets out, and Denny's like, dude, what the hell? And I was like, well, I didn't want you hanging on my quarter panel, man. You were going to drag me down the straightaway and side draft me and slow me down and cost me a spot or 2, and I wasn't going to let that happen. And he said, yeah, but you just ran me into the fence like it wasn't there. And I said, I figured that's what you'd have done if you was me. And he goes, you don't know me like that. I wouldn't do that. You're wrong. And so, I mean, these kind of things happen every race where, I mean, how many times has everybody that's drove a race car been drove into the fence off the corner because the guy just disrespected you or just didn't want to get raced down the next straightaway, wanted a spot.
Yeah, caught you in a moment where you didn't care. And so you just, we all have those moments, and certainly they happen on the racetrack. I'll tell you this much. I boldly stated that Denny's all talk and he's not going to back it up. Well, I stand corrected. He's actually quite the opposite. He's backing up his talk almost to a fault.
the part that was the strangest to me was how he kept hitting him down the back straightaway and through turn 3 and 4 coming to the finish.
I like the Ross versus Denny. I don't want them to I don't want them to race respectfully. As a fan, it's one of the few things I'm clinging on to when I watch these races every week. That there's a rivalry on the racetrack that we can kind of, even if they're in 9th and 10th or wherever they are on the track, if they're near each other, you notice. I don't know of anybody else like that on the track, and there's not even a close second, frankly. Everybody can have their opinion about Denny and Ross and whether or not, but I appreciate the fact that he's using, a platform to be honest. I also I would be careful to discourage these drivers from, going back into a shell. Honesty and transparency is something. It's a gift. It's a privilege that we get to enjoy. You just don't want to make people feel like, it's too problematic for them to be that way. And Denny certainly gives us, an honest and transparent take every week. In fact, he had a lot of things on this podcast unrelated to the Ross incident that I thought were very, very interesting. One is he went on a rant about this short track package, and Jared Allen asked some really good questions about the short track package. Denny had an interesting take about that. He also clarified some stuff about the Chase Elliott, the injury. That this is a conversation that goes on a couple weeks. So this is kind of candor that not everybody's willing to do, and Denny's one of them, and so I appreciate that. Is it apples and apples with Bubba Wallace's situation from last year? I mean, that was clearly a situation that happened on a track, whereas now you've got Denny just coming, once they're back home admitting something. Is it the same?
No, because there's some severity to what happened last year with Bubba, the hits and the contact that cars made with each other. You could look at it like the intent to go crash somebody is the same no matter what the result is.
Right.
So should be a similar, penalty across the board. If you're trying to do it, you're as guilty as the guy that succeeded. But NASCAR often looks at the severity of the moment and reacts based on, how damning it was or how much the repercussion was for everybody else involved.
Hey, if you like that video, like and comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss another piece of Dirty Mo Media content.